clamshell. We've selected our pattern. Now what I want to do is I want to repeat it. So we're going to come up to here and we're going to repeat that multiple times on the horizontal. And we see it didn't quite fit, but we're going to go into scale, tell it to lock the proportions and make it fit. So now it fits inside our block. And you can see the block isn't quite square with our clamshells, but we're going to live with that. Now we're going to go back to repeat, and we're going to do a vertical row. And now it would be fun to nest those. So we're going to go to offset, and we're going to make it so that those points on this meet the bottom of the tangent with that arc. But now it's too small for the block, so we're going to add one more horizontal, and now it's too big for the block. So now we're going to go over here to crop and cut everything out that's not in the block. The other way, so now with the design saved me having to restart it each time on each row. So that's one of the advantages of doing this, is that the computer makes that decision for us as to where it should do that. Now we're coming up here. You can see it coming up here. The blue marks tell us where the needle's going to be. It says cut the thread. We're ignoring that. We're just raising the pressure foot. It's moving to the new spot. Pull up the bobbin thread. Needle's making its tie off. It's going to repeat that thing. We see another little jump stitch. It'll say cut the thread. We raise the pressure foot, let it move, make our jump stitch, move to the new spot, and we are ready to do the fourth nesting row of clamshells. So this is a really easy to do thing. We've got to see a couple of features of this. We scaled it, we replicated it, and we cropped it and offset it. So that's a pretty sophisticated capabilities. But now we're going to get to do something that is really cool. Okay, so it's going to tell me here that we are done by stopping. I move the machine, I put the pressure foot down, I hit my needle up and down, and I pull up the bobbin thread. The reason we moved the machine a couple of 3 inches is so that we now have that much bobbin thread underneath, so when it starts again it won't leave a tail. Here I'm going to cut off my beginning thing. So you can see that's looking pretty good. We've got some jump stitches we'll get to cut here. Sorry for the camera angle. I'm doing this without any help. Okay, now the fun part, now the advanced part. We're going to do the nesting, and we hit nesting, and I am going to roll the quilt, which is something that is really amazing that you can do this with the machine. So it says select your nesting point. So I'm going to come over here and find a point that would be easy to find on this quilt. So I'm going to pick the lowest point of the arch, centered. So I line up my vertical blue mark on the y-axis and my horizontal blue mark on the x-axis. Actually shows me my x and y coordinates there. And I hit mark. Now that remembers where we are in that design. And you could put marks on the quilt yourself, but you really don't have to do that. So what we're going to do is come over here and undo our bungees. We're going to release our quilt roll, and we're going to turn the crank here. And what I'm trying to show you is how you would get this all to work. Lock those back, tighten it back up. Get my light back over here so you can see it better. So now we rolled the quilt. it says move the machine to your nesting point. So I'm going to select that point on my pattern down here and tell it yes. And now this icon comes up, and when that does, it locks the sewing machine to the robot. So as I move the sewing machine, I can see where my needle is going to hit in relationship to that mark that I put on the quilt. So I know that that's about where I want it to be. And I look up here and it looks pretty good. And you can see all the corners. So then we say, perfect, go for it. So now we're ready to sew again. So we hit the start point and it's good to go. So it's going to move over here to where we want it to start. It says pull up our bobbin thread, which we left 3 inches long, and hit the start button. And it is sewing. And you can see how nicely that nests with the previous design, even though we moved the quilt. So that is the simplified version of advanced nesting on a computerized robotic Tin Lizzie with a Quilt Magician. And we're going to select nest, and we're going to go again to the lowest point on our quilt, centered, and tell it yes. Now this time we don't have to roll the quilt, so we just tell it go again. And we didn't move the machine, so we just tell it go again. And it says it's ready if we hit this. If we had moved it, we would turn that on and you could see our nesting points again. And we would look at our quilt and down here and see. So we finished, and you can see after we trim those threads, we have a really nice 72 different clamshells, all nested in that one little block, even though the block wasn't perfectly square on the quilt.